Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Nolan Navigates. I'm Beth Nolan, Private Wealth Advisor for Raymond James. Today, we're getting into a topic that's deeply personal, incredibly important, and let's be honest, really challenging: divorce. It's one of those topics that touches so many lives, whether directly or indirectly, because it's not just about the end of a relationship. It affects your family, your finances, your future, and how you move forward. My guest today is someone who helps people navigate this exact crossroads with clarity and intention. Karen Covy is a former divorce attorney, mediator, and now a divorce coach who works with high-achieving individuals to help them make smarter, more grounded decisions during one of life's most emotional transitions. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks for being here. Okay. So you started your career inside the legal system as a divorce attorney, and then you made a pretty significant shift to coaching. What did you see happening in the legal world that led you to that switch?
Okay, so I'll tell you a story. So I had a secretary who at the time had worked for all the big guns in town, right? All the big divorce law firms. And I was purposely small. I didn't want to be an empire. I just wanted to be a solo. So she was then working for me. It was a summer day, hot. I had a client meeting. The door's open, client leaves. I walked to her desk. I put the file down and she said, no one does that, right? And I said, does what? I had a conversation. And she said, you just spent an hour and a half with this person saying, here's what mediation is, here's what litigation is, here's what collaborative divorce is. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Now, what do you want to do? And I said, well, if the other guys aren't saying that, what are they doing? And she said, here's a contract, sign here. And I was horrified because there are so many ways to go through a divorce today. I thought as a lawyer, it was part of my job to educate my clients. And what I realized for the first time was that my colleagues, not all of them shared my opinion. And so I said, well, this is wrong, right? So that led me into the world of coaching. For a long time, I thought I could do both. That doesn't work. They taught us in law school that the law is a jealous mistress. That's 100% true. I couldn't do both. And so I had to choose. And I just saw this gap in what people needed and what lawyers were providing. And I said, okay, I'm going to step into the gap.
Well, great. That's great. We're so glad you did. All right. I think a lot of people enter divorce feeling like they've lost control, that it's something happening to them rather than, say, something that they have any real say in it. Why is that such a common experience?
Because the divorce system, and it's a system, doesn't work the way you think it does. It's not intuitive. It's not user-friendly. It's not efficient. It's arcane. And so people think that there's nothing they can do about it. They don't understand how the system works. And their spouse becomes somebody that they don't even know anymore. They're acting totally differently. And so there's a giant feeling of a loss of control. There doesn't have to be the actual loss of control. That's where I come in as a coach, is to help people regain that sense of control and understand what they're doing so that they can do it better. But when it's happening to you, so many things, they are out of your control. You don't control your lawyer or the judge or the system. And so you're just flailing around helpless, trying to get your feet underneath you. And it's very, very common.
Okay. All right. So getting out of that something happening to me mindset and into something more intentional. If someone decides they want to choose how they go through divorce, what are the main paths available to them and how do those differ?
The main paths in this area are mediation, litigation, collaborative divorce. In some parts of the country, there's also arbitration available as well. Or you can do what people call collaborative light. In other words, cooperative. You get lawyers and you try to work things out. So let's go through those one by one. Let's start with litigation. Litigation is the default way to get a divorce. If you can't agree on anything else, you're going to court, right? So you get a lawyer, your spouse gets a lawyer, you file in court, and you're off to the races. And then you follow the process the court system has set up for you. It's the way it works. Mediation, you and your spouse get together, either with lawyers or without. There's different ways to do mediation. And the mediator is a neutral, independent third party who helps facilitate an agreement. They help facilitate a conversation between you and your spouse, because when you're getting a divorce, it's hard to talk to your spouse. So they help you talk to each other and come to terms about money, kids, anything you want. Collaborative divorce is its own process. It's an out-of-court process where you sit down with a lawyer who's collaboratively trained. Your spouse has a lawyer who is collaboratively trained, and there is more of a team approach. There's going to be a neutral coach, or maybe each one of you as a coach. There'll be a neutral financial advisor, and the team helps you get through the divorce. What's different really about collaborative is that everybody on the team, the professionals and you and your spouse, all sign a contract in the beginning of the process saying, we agree to stay out of court. And if anybody goes into court for any reason, which is your legal right, then all of the professionals withdraw and you as the client start over again, which is horrifying to most people. Mm-hmm. And that's why it works, because it keeps the lawyers from egging you on just so that they can prolong your fight. It keeps you from giving up when it gets hard to negotiate, and it keeps everybody at the table talking. That's collaborative divorce. Okay. Then there's arbitration, which in Illinois isn't used that much, but in other parts of the country it is. It's starting to gain some traction. Think of arbitration as having a private judge. So you're not in the court system, but there are rules. You go through an arbitration, which is like a trial. It's more formal than mediation, right? You present your side, your spouse presents their side, and the arbitrator decides. That's the difference between arbitration and mediation. The mediator doesn't decide anything. The mediator helps you make the decision. And if you can't make a decision, mediation fails, right? Well, the arbitrator makes the decision for you, right? And then there's a lot of variations and versions of all of those different processes.
Sounds like a lot.
It is.
As you're talking about this, I'm thinking about how similar this is to the way business owners make high stakes decisions, especially around exits or transitions. What parallels do you see between navigating divorce and making strategic business decisions?
They're very similar, except that people, when it comes to personal decisions, they start to get paralyzed because the stakes are personal and they're so much higher. You're talking about the things that people value the most, their kids and their money. And if they're a business owner, their business, by the way. And so part of the way you make decisions, I take my clients through a decision-making process, because when you're going through a divorce, you're going to be faced with making more important life decisions in a confined period of time than you will in any other similar time period in your life. You have to understand how to make those decisions. And so you got to get your head in the game. And there are steps in a process. You have to get information, widen your options, brainstorm what your possibilities are, look at both sides of the issue, look at consequences, and make a decision. But especially when it's personal, you've got your heart more involved. Now, the truth of the matter is, people don't like to think it. Every decision you ever make, whether it's business or personal, is emotional.
Sure.
You make it emotionally.
Sure.
People don't believe that. They think, no, I thought about this. I weighed the pros and cons. Well, first of all, making a list of pros and cons doesn't work. Because here's what you do. You tell me if I'm wrong. You make a little T-chart. You put all the pros on one side, the cons on the other. One clearly outweighs the other. And you look and you go, okay, there's 3 pros and 15 cons, but the pros are so much more important. And then you're still stuck.
Yeah.
Right? So the way to make a decision is to pull yourself out of that and start using other tools to say, is this good or is this bad? But fundamentally, it's going to be emotional. There was a story, I think there was a therapist or researcher, and his name was Antonio Damasio. And he had a client who had a brain tumor the size of an orange. And so they had to do surgery. They take the brain tumor out. It was successful. And they were worried, like, can he walk and talk? He had perfect function. The only thing was that taking that tumor out flattened his emotions. It damaged the emotional part of his brain. And what they found, his name was Elliot, or at least that's his pseudonym. What they found was Elliot couldn't decide what to have for breakfast in the morning. He couldn't decide which route to take to work. He could not make any decisions because he had no emotions. And so whether we want to believe it or not, every decision we make is emotional, but our brains are so good and so fast that they come up with reasons like a split second after your gut tells you what you want to do, and then you logically justify why the decision you made was the one you wanted to make logically.
Okay. Looking back, a lot of people say, I wish I had done things differently. I know even I think that a little bit about my divorce. What are some mistakes that you see over and over again that lead to that kind of regret?
2 things. One, not being honest with your spouse. Because it's so ironic, because people are afraid to be honest because they don't want to jeopardize the relationship. But what they don't understand is that if you're not honest, you already have jeopardized the relationship. So that's the first mistake. And the second one is not doing something about it early enough. A lot of people, they know go to marriage counseling, right? Well, by the time they go to marriage counseling, they've been fighting for years and years and years, and there's so much water under the bridge that they're drowning. And it's hard to throw them a life jacket and pull them back out. Yes, some people can pull it out, but a lot of them can't. If you actually paid attention to your marriage and got help sooner, then that would help a lot of people not get in that position. And of course, that some people, other marriages break up for lots of reasons, but for the vast majority of people, that would certainly help.
Interesting. And then what about just regrets of decisions made during the divorce process? I imagine you can write a book about this, but what are some common things of like, oh, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have done X, Y, Z?
Most people say if I had it to do over again, I would have, number one, gotten a divorce coach. I didn't even know what that was, like someone to fill in the gaps of my knowledge. And number two, get a financial advisor. People wait until they're faced with a settlement proposal or they've already settled, and then they bring the financials to an advisor and say, okay, now what I do? By that time, the die is cast. You can't change what your settlement agreement is. But if you start in the beginning of your divorce and you start inputting the information and working with a team, the right people on your team, if you have a house, what about a realtor? What about a mortgage lender? What about a financial advisor, a coach, a therapist? Get all the people. People think the only person they need is a divorce lawyer, and that's a huge mistake. So if they get the right professionals and the right advice right out of the gate, now they have the data to make better decisions. And then they don't have the regrets. But if they wait too long, they don't.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. All right, so you touched on something important, and that's the emotional side of this. Even the most rational people can get overwhelmed in a situation like this. And that is, I know what I should do, but I just can't seem to think clearly. How do you help clients stay grounded and make clear decisions when emotions are running high?
You got to develop a way of dealing with your emotions. And by the way, some of this just takes time. You've got to process. You've got to work through. You know how they tell you if your spouse dies, you shouldn't make any major decisions for a year.
Yes,
Right. Well, they don't tell you that in divorce, and they should, but you can't. Right? You don't. Nobody wants to be going through a divorce for a year, although many people are, right? But you don't want to think that, right? You want to make decisions really quickly, but when your head isn't clear, that's a bad time to make decisions. So it's about getting yourself that therapist to help you talk through and work through your emotions sooner rather than later. Finding techniques that will help you. And a good technique is not, oh, I'll just have another drink, or you want a healthy habit. Like a lot of people get into exercise. A lot of people get into maybe meditation or yoga or walking or doing something to clear the cobwebs from their brain so that they can think clearly. If you can't think clearly, you can't make a good decision. You're just never going to make the best decision. So it's about learning what your own emotional triggers are and what works for you. How can you manage yourself so that you're not triggered, so that you can think clearly? Everybody going through a divorce, they want to manage their spouse's triggers. They want their spouse to manage their emotions. You shouldn't talk to me like this. You shouldn't say things like that. That's great. They probably shouldn't, but you're never going to change them. You're never going to control them. So the only person you can control is you. What can you do when you feel those emotions getting up, when you start to get emotionally flooded? What can you do to say, stop, I need a break. Go take a walk. Go do something. Get physical movement will help you clear your mind, because what happens biochemically when you start to get triggered, your stress hormones go up. And then all of a sudden, when the stress hormones flood your brain, the thinking part of your brain, the analytical part, literally goes offline. You can't think. And it takes at least 20 minutes to clear that out. So if you're in a negotiation or a discussion or an argument and you feel yourself starting to get flooded, the smartest thing you can do is say, okay, time out. I need a break. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm going to go take a walk. I'll be back in 20 minutes. And you walk around, you walk those hormones out, you get yourself back under control, and then you sit down and say, okay, now let's talk again.
What great advice. And it's so applicable to so many different situations.
100%.
Yes, absolutely. All right. What are some signs that someone is in divorce fog and shouldn't be making major decisions right now?
When you can't remember things, you can't think clearly, you feel you feel foggy, you actually feel like you're kind of out of it, like everything is a bit surreal. When you find yourself forgetting things, not being able to focus on something, those are all signs that you're in a fog. And to the extent possible, you think your job is to solve all the problems in your divorce, negotiate all the issues and be done. No, your problem is to take control of yourself. First, clear the fog. First, deal with how you feel. Then you're in a position to start making the decisions. If you do it the other way around, which everybody is tempted to do, that's when you make decisions you regret.
Good perspective. So let's talk about what's really at stake, because it isn't just about getting through the divorce, it's about what you're protecting on the other side. What do people most need to be thinking about when it comes to their kids, their finances, and their long-term future?
What do you want long term? What's your goal for the end of the divorce? People's goal is often just, I want to get through this.
Yeah.
I get it, but there's going to be life after divorce. You want your divorce to be a blip in the radar screen of your life. You do not want it to be the defining moment of the rest of your life. So it's about clearing the fog and starting to think, okay, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want for my kids? What kind of a relationship do I want? What matters to me financially? And that answer is going to be different for different people. For some people, it's like, look, I need to be financially secure. I need to know that I have enough money coming in for X number of years to get the bills paid so that I can relax and focus and get the kids to a certain stage, right? Or it may be, I need to keep my business because that's the income generating machine. And if I don't have that, then everything else goes down the tubes. So it's figuring out what matters to you and then going for that. Because the problem with divorce is that for most people, it's not like you sit down in a negotiation and your lawyer or your spouse's lawyer says, okay, you've got to decide this and this and this and this and that. No. Those decisions come randomly. It's like, today we're going to deal with temporary support. The next day we're going to deal with this thing. The next day we're going to, oh, and by the way, what do you want to do about this? And the problem is when people don't know what's coming, they don't prepare for it. And then they're being pressured to make a decision like really quickly. And so they come up with something, but it's not what they really want. And when the decisions that you're making are random, at the end of your divorce, you end up wherever you end up. And who knows if that's where you want to be. But if you say, no, at the end of my divorce, I want to be in this position, financially, relationally, physically, like where am I going to live? What's my life going to look like? I want to be here. Then as those random decisions come up, all you have to do is ask yourself one thing. Does making this decision this way get me closer to my goal or farther away? And if you keep making decisions that get you closer to your goal, then at the end of your divorce, you will be closer to your goal.
Yeah. Begin with the end in mind, right?
Stephen Covey.
That's right. Well, I love that perspective. And I think that it just further emphasizes the need to be doing that financial planning along the way as you're going through this process and not after the fact, because that financial plan can be, a nice roadmap to being able to get you to where you need to be.
100%, because the beauty of a financial plan is that it forces you to say, what do I want? What are my values? What matters to me? Because obviously, we don't love it all. I want to have a perfect retirement and a big nest egg and plenty of money. But this is the real world, and you don't always get all of those things right out of the gate. Okay, so what do you want first? What's the most important? Is it more important for you to save for your retirement? Is it more important for you to pay the bills today? Is it more important for you to keep the house? To put your kids through college? What matters to you? And it's not like you're only going to go for one thing and everything else gets kicked to the curb, but you have a priority list and you can do one thing at a time, which allows you to focus and allows you to achieve your goals sequentially versus being all over the place.
I think that priority list is really important. Let's talk about that next chapter. What does it look like to intentionally rebuild your life after divorce?
You're not going to believe it, but it looks exciting. I mean, a lot
I
of
do
people.
believe it can.
Yes. Well, some people have different reactions. Sometimes, especially when I was working as a divorce lawyer, and I would take people into court, do the final hearing, walk out the door, and it's like, congratulations, you're divorced, here's your judgment. And people's reactions are really interesting. I mean, some people are just devastated and sobbing. Other people are like, woohoo! I'm like, you cannot get married. Not again, you got to wait. Give this some time. And so how you start rebuilding is to say, again, it starts with you. Take a break. I am a big fan of like, go on a little vacation, treat yourself to something, do something fun and cool, and take some space to say, what do I want my life to look like? Intentionally create your life. And the life you'd create is going to be different than the life I'm going to create. Doesn't matter. There is no right and wrong. It's what do you want and how are you going to create it and what steps do you need to take to do that? Yeah. And again, I'm a big fan of therapy because like the people who start dating immediately after divorce, you usually aren't in a good headspace yet, unless your divorce took 5 years, which happens sometimes, but you need some time to heal, to work on yourself, to work on your own stuff. And it can take some time. So go on a retreat, go on a vacation, treat yourself to something, but relax. You've just been through hell. Let your nervous system relax a little bit and then go from there.
Yeah. So we're going to do a rapid fire round.
Okay.
Some questions. So just to leave our listeners with a few sharp takeaways. What is the biggest myth about divorce?
That the first thing you need to do is get a lawyer. If you do that, you're going to make a mistake. The first thing you need to do is decide which process you want to use. Then pick a lawyer who does that.
Okay. The best first step if someone is thinking about it but hasn't acted yet. I think you just said it.
And get prepared.
Yeah.
This is like anything else in life. The more prepared you are, the better you're going to do.
Yep. One mindset shift that changes everything.
This is not happening to you. It's happening for you. And that's a hard shift because when you're in it, you feel like, poor me, it's happening to me. And you've got to work. That's a stage. You just don't want to get stuck there, right? To look at this as an opportunity for growth and an opportunity to create your next chapter versus, oh my gosh, my life sucks. It'll never be any good. I'll be a mess forever. You won't be unless you keep thinking like that.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, Karen, this has been so insightful and such a great discussion. I appreciate you being here. And what I most appreciate about your approach is that you're really helping people move from reaction to intention and from chaos to clarity. And I think that that's something that applies to life lessons well beyond just divorce. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you or someone you know is navigating this season, share this episode with them. You don't have to let life's hardest transitions happen to you. You can take an active role in shaping what comes next. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.